Welcome to the Introduction to Hellenic Polytheism presentation that I usually do for my server. I wanted to make a YouTube video for you all so you guys can see it whenever you want. So let's get into this today. So I wanted to introduce my server a little bit. The Divine Cove is a server I created from few people to now having over 2,000 plus people, almost 3,000 now. So this is what this presentation would have been done in. So if you want to check it out, it will be in the bio. This presentation itself was made from the Oathsworn section of my server. A few people wanted to add in their 2 cents. Oathsworn is just somebody that dedicated their lives to a specific deity by doing a oath. So this is going to be a more so in-depth basics of Hellenic polytheism. We're not going to get too into different cults and things like that, but yeah. So first thing I want to focus on is how large ancient Greece is. This itself is from 500 BCE. You can see how much it expands. And this is not even including Africa on here, which we do see the top of Africa being heavily colonized by the ancient Greeks. So this means here that the history of ancient Greece is extremely expansive. You see here that there are different areas of Greece. The main ones that we focus on is usually the classical period to the end of the Hellenistic period, and some people like to go into the Roman periods, which of course a lot of people think the gods are the same, which they're not, but that's not what I'm going to get into today. However, the history itself is far more expansive even before that with the Cycladic, Minoan, and Mycenaean eras. This is where we start to see the accumulation and the syncretism of the deities from this region that thus turn into the deities in the classical period. I do want to bring up that we do see the Dark Ages here in purple on that timeline, but the Dark Ages themselves does not mean that nothing happened at all. We just, for archaeologists, don't have a lot of information, as it seems to us that it kind of just goes blank, meaning they did not have a lot of writing, and so it kind of went quote-unquote dark. So whenever looking at ancient Greek history, please understand that there is hundreds of years that you are incorporating when you're looking at classical Greek religion. So there are actually a lot of deities because of this that are not Greek in origin. I know, crazy. We have deities like Apollon, who is seen as a Dorian or an Anatolian god. Sometimes even people think that he is Sumerian. And then Hecate, who is a known Anatolian goddess. So this means here that the pre-Greek classical pantheon was extremely different than the classical Greek pantheon. So I'm going to bring in some definitions here. It's really important to not call ourselves Hellenists unless you are a scholar, or Hellenistic polytheistic, because that just denotes a time period with specific deities that were brought into the pantheon. If you're worshiping syncretized deities like Zeus Ammon or Pluton Serapis, then sure, you can be a Hellenistic polytheist, but you're most likely probably not doing that as a beginner. It's extremely important to understand as well that Hellenic polytheism is an umbrella term for multiple different traditions and mysteries like the Orphic mysteries, the Elysian mysteries, Platonism, Pythagoreanism, etc. The religion itself was not unified. There were so many localized traditions. So if it comes to that, what do we practice? Well, we don't have a doctrine that we follow. We are not an orthodoxy-based practice. Instead, we base our entire practice on orthopraxy, which is correct practice. This is used by many earlier religions, a lot of polytheistic religions, as they did not focus on a doctrine. It means that we just follow specific life morals of being pious, and we practice cleansing for the gods. That's really it. It focuses more on how we live our lives, not in a sense of sins, but how we live our lives when it comes to the deities around us and how, of course, we treat other people. So this means that the myths aren't literal because we don't have an orthodoxy-based practice. But of course, the myths are important as they include aspects of the culture, and some myths have cult centers, which they believe did happen. I see I wrote centaries, but we're not going to focus on that here. So what are some needs that we have when it comes to Hellenic polytheism? Well, it's extremely important to research. You're going to have to research. This is history. If you don't like history and never liked history, you're not going to like Hellenic polytheism, okay? So you're going to have to research a lot to see what myths actually were taken in a more literal sense, in a ritual sense, especially with epithets. You're going to want to focus on epithets. And then, of course, you're going to need a place where you give offerings or pray. This can be something online or a small little area like in a tin, but it can also be something outside or a more grand shrine or altar that you're using as a temple. It's extremely important to realize that temples are not something that most people could go inside. It's usually just for the priests or priestesses. People would do the rituals outside of the temples near the altar. There's a difference between altars and shrines. So this is a quick overview of prayers and hymns. Prayers and hymns can also be within one another. So a prayer is something that addresses a god in a word or a thought, usually a type of hope or wish. A lot of times people will pray just to praise them as well. Anyone can write prayers. You don't have to use a written prayer already. Again, this is not orthodoxy. We don't have like 2 Timothy 2:15 and things like that. You're going to want to focus on invoking the god using appropriate epithets. Not using like poetic epithets, but cultic epithets. Epithets that are going to denote a patronage or a meaning for the god. So, for example, you're going to want to start with praising the god as well. So, for example, if I wanted to do a prayer to Hermes to get more cha-ching or money, I would say, Hermes, son of Susamaya, slayer of Argos, praising him for one of his mythic deeds. I ask you, friend of man, to come into my space and bless me with money. Now, this is an important part of the prayer because I'm going to tell him that I've done things for him in the past. So I would add on, Hermes, if I've ever so pleased you with my past offerings, can I please have more money? If you're doing a offering right then and there, you will tell him the offering that you're doing now. If you're going to be doing something in the future for the prayer, not just because the prayer happened, but because, you're asking a God something, then you're going to put it that way. So you can do prayers in a way of things I've already done, things I am doing, or things I will be doing. So there are some prayer positions. Extremely important to understand that a lot of these are more so not stuck in stone. People did not always do this. If you're on a battlefield, you're not going to raise your arms up to the sky randomly. You're going to want to keep your hands on your sword so you don't get stabbed. So for prayers, if you want to do it more ritualistically, a lot of times I just hold my hands up. But for Ouranic, you're going to want to outstretch your arms or hold them towards the sky. Gods of the sea, you're going to want to put it towards the water. And chthonic, you're going to want to put your hands closer to the ground. When it comes to prayers and rituals, understand that chthonic was usually done at night. It was not seen as something that was large and grand. So keep that in mind. This is just a little quick infograph if you want to look at it. You don't have to. I'm going to keep it up for like 2 seconds here. And you can pause it. But I'm now going to move on. So what is a hymn? Well, a hymn is a song of praise. It was usually sung. When you look at the epic poetry, like the Odyssey or the Iliad, they were poetic in nature. They were made to be sung in specific hexameters, so the bard themselves could memorize the 11 hours of the song. So when it comes to Homeric hymns, it's going to be in that same style. So hymns are more lyrical in nature, and they're usually going to be longer than prayers. Some of them are more based on praise of the gods without a petition, but Orphic hymns typically contain both a hymn and a prayer. So in the end, prayer in Greek religion is noted that Homeric hymns do not seem to have a petition at the end, but Orphic hymns do. So you can do an offering or a gift alongside a hymn, or you can just give the hymn as the offering. This is going to be a little bit of something that I wrote, which is how does a ritual even freaking work? Like, what is a ritual? Well, you don't have to do this all the time. This is more so a formal way of doing rituals that I would do for public ceremonies or for the server. But it's going to start with like an opening procession where you're going to walk towards the altar where you're going to be doing the rituals, and then you're going to light the hearth after cleansing the participants and the space. You're always going to want to give the first libation to glorious goddess Hestia, which is the hearth, and then you're going to do prayers and hymns to the gods involved. End with libations after each. You don't have to do it every single time. Like if you're doing a prayer, then a hymn, you don't have to do sponde, which means libation. And you can instead just do it right after, but it's really up to you how many libations you wish to give. When I'm doing large ceremonies, I only have a single cup, so it's very hard to do as many libations as I would love to give to the glorious gods. But after this is going to be more so the festivals and activities, and this is then going to be the giving of physical offerings like votives or foods or activities. And then after this, you're going to close the ceremony with a libation from each deity backwards to Hestia. So you're going to want to end with Hestia again. Like I said before, chthonic deities usually have their ceremonies happen at night. And festivals usually included multiple gods, not just one. Like for Thargeria, the giving of the first fruits for Apollo's sacred day, and included Demeter, Chloe, and other various activities. Even the adoption of boys into their new family. So, yes, if you ever wanted to do a more traditional offering or ritual, this is how you would necessarily do it. So this is just a quick overview of offerings. An offering is something you give to a god or goddess. Offerings can take a variety of forms. In ancient Greece, sometimes they even just gave pretty little rocks, not even crystals. So it's extremely important to understand that you can give really anything, but it is important how you give the things, especially with the different realms or ritual traditions like chthonic, Ouranic, or Nalic. With some deities, some of them can even be chthonic, and in some epithets, they can be Ouranic. So it's very important to understand that. When it comes to chthonic offerings, you're going to want to give them in a full. You're not going to want to share them or dilute them. With Ouranic offerings, like it's going to say here, you're going to want to give something that smells good or even share it. So Ouranic deities are something that goes to the sky or the heavens. And chthonic deities are going to be anything of the earth, like Demeter or Gaia themselves. But deities like Hecate are also Ouranic and Nalic. So you're going to want to research which epithets you are necessarily using to understand how you're going to give the offerings. Just to go over it one last time, Ouranic you can share with, you can take some of the food and you're going to dilute the libation that you give. Chthonic, you're going to give the entirety of the thing in the ground somehow in any way you can, like a flower pot, etc. And Analic, it depends on how you're feeling that day. There is really no specific outline for Analic. Sometimes they throw the entirety of full-blown chariot with horses in. Sometimes they treat them more Ouranic. So it's really up to you. You're just going to want to probably get into the water somehow, if you can, of course. So this more so, again, goes over everything that I just yapped about. And on the topic of offerings, we're going to want to talk a little bit more about the role of priests, because that's important here, because who the hell is the one doing it? Well, according to Walter Burkett, anybody could be a priest in a sense. Anybody could do rituals as a ritual expert, but the role of Hierieras, hierierphores, or hierieros, which is the multiple different terms for a keeper of sacred things. They more so were public offices that held civic engagement, upheld sanctuary laws, took care of the sanctuaries in the cities. So that's more so what they did. So when somebody's called themselves a hierera, like myself, I'm taking care of a sanctuary in some way, shape, or form, whether it be my server or the one that I have here, or the ones hopefully that I get into, but I'm not going to get into that. A lot of times they have their own specific ways of doing things because there were a lot of different local traditions that the hierieras or keeper of sacred things had to adapt to. They were servants of the gods in a sense, making sure that they're happy and taken care of. So household worship. This is going to be something that a lot of you should focus on first instead of going out and, doing random deities because you like the mythology. Household worship is a keystone to creating a foundation or reliable and lifelong love for the religion. So household worship are deities like Hestia, which you have to include anyway, Zeus, and important home deities like Apollon, Hecate, and Hermes or Hermes. They were important deities seen outside and inside the home that would help avert from threats or intruders or even external threats like diseases or spirits, etc. They were held in high importance. But you can also include in your household gods any deities that you really want to hold or you want to have in your little oikios altar, your home altar. So this can be the deities that you are interested in to include alongside the household gods. Now, this should have been added a little bit earlier, but it's okay. We're going over it now. How the frick do you cleanse yourself? And what is the difference between miasma and lima and all these things that I see thrown around? Well, miasma just means stain, pollution, or guilt. It's something that you can't really see. It could be like a smell, like where did that smell come from? So miasma in itself is a term for pollutants that you can't really see. So it's more so an umbrella term for everything else. So it's just a pollutant in a sense. You're going to have to do a type of ritual cleansing, which can just be washing your hands. With lima, that's what we really got to focus on here because this is the thing you wash away. It's like the dirt that you get from every day. When you take a shower at the end of the day, you're washing off lima. So focus more on washing yourself of lima before you do rituals. When it comes to miasma, the way that you could get that in your everyday is more so eating a chthonic offering or sharing with the chthonic gods. If you had a death in your family, if you gave birth, etc., that is going to produce miasma because it went against the natural cycle of things. Or you, with doing chthonic and Ouranic, you interrupted the sacred versus, unsacred. This is going to be a little bit of a Hellenic polytheism FAQ. I'm not going to go through all of these, but Quentin, who is a wonderful, wonderful keeper of sacred things for Hecate, wrote this down for us, which is absolutely amazing. You can pause it if you'd like to read over it. It's a funny little infographic. I'm very appreciative of the things that they do. A lot of it is, at least for this, is a little bit repetitive of the things I've already yapped about, so that's why I'm not re-going through it, but they explain it in a better way than I did just by speaking. They're an awesome, awesome person. So, clearly we can't do questions here, but if you ever have questions, you can message me on TikTok on any of my videos, or you can look at my server shop. I do a 60-minute one-on-one with readings question palooza, meaning you can ask me anything and I will help you with anything that I can, including, pulling cards and all this stuff. So thank you guys so much for sticking through this video, and I am proud of you, and I know the gods would be proud of you too. Bye.